very unusual for Tory MPs not to support a budget.
Very unusual, but there's nothing unusual, is there, about Tory infighting? It is all that happens now. It's sort of the only story in domestic politics. I think there is a lot of resentment and bitterness within the Tory party, particularly at this sort of project. George Osborne is behind a lot of this budget. He was behind Project Fear. I think the feeling now is he's behind Project Gloom. And they think within number 10, number 11, they think within there that they are cleverly managing expectations. If we do sort of, 5 days of gloomy narrative, maybe a couple of weeks of this, a few more weeks of this, then eventually Brits will start to think it's not that bad. Actually things are all right. But it's a bit like for me it feels like when someone comes over to fix your broken boiler, which is definitely broken, the economy is in bad shape, and then says, "Oh, this is really bad. This is terrible," and you're thinking, "Oh God, how much is it going to cost?" And then you are ripped off, but because you've been expecting such a huge rip-off, it actually doesn't feel that bad, and that's what they think they're doing. I'm not sure the public feel that way about it, and I'm not sure the entire Tory party does either.
Well, let's bring in Laurie Laird, economics commentator, on this. How should we be fixing the boiler, to continue Freddie's metaphor there? I mean, is this harsh medicine?
It's such a good metaphor.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can work on this a little bit. You're still going to pay to fix the boiler, right? You need that boiler. And to talk about spending cuts when we're heading into a recession, which is essentially saying, I'll put another jumper on and another jumper. I'm not going to fix the boiler. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. We learned that economic orthodoxy is actually something we need to pay attention to, right? That's all that we learned from Liz Truss. Another part of economic orthodoxy is don't cut spending when you're going into a recession. Your government spending is your backstop
But the
here.
problem is inflation as well whilst you're going into a recession. It's like all these problems that they're trying, this energy crisis. I mean, it's not just one problem that they're trying to tackle with this autumn statement.
Absolutely. But we are in a position where we can, believe it or not, after Liz Truss, there's no extra premium. There's no political uncertainty premium in gilt rates, in UK borrowing rates. The UK can borrow for 10 years at slightly over 3%. If you're not going to borrow a little bit when you're going into a recession, I'm not sure when you would use that borrowing space.
OK, so do you think that's going to be the narrative then today from a lot of economists, that actually, what we've learned from Trussonomics is that orthodoxy needs to be respected, but you can also over-egg the, what's the phrase?
If you can borrow, if you can borrow at 3% for 10 years and you're going into a recession, this is the time to do it. I agree with Freddie, though, that I think that the powers that be are really preparing us for something that might be less worse than what they're saying. Really, lowering expectations.
It's almost dishonest when they do that, in a sense, isn't it?
Wait, politicians not quite telling the truth?
Yeah,
really?
yeah. I mean, do you not think the voters see through it in the end, Freddie?
I think so. I think the voters. Well, I think the markets will look at sort of the OBR forecast, which will go live as soon as the budget.
Which is usually wrong.
Which is almost invariably wrong. But the problem is it satisfies the markets, and that was Truss's big mistake with the mini budget. She didn't do that sort of fake dance with statistics that the markets expect.
What about the ordinary person in all of this? And I hate the phrase the ordinary person, but people who are going to be looking at their bills at the end of the month, knowing that there's a cost of living crisis at the moment. Everybody's been warned, as we've been talking about, paying more tax, but people are going to be fed up and depressed, aren't they, after this?
Well, again, we've told them to be fed up and depressed, so it can only be better than what they have prepared them for. I'm a little bit surprised that we're talking about raising the energy price cap, but still retaining it as a universal thing. I think that's not the best use of government money. I would prefer to see that targeted at the people who are most vulnerable.
But that's when the politics drives the policy, isn't it? Because it's popular with the voters who are over 65, who tend to vote Conservative.
Well, and who tend to choose the Conservative Party leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, Freddie, what's your prediction then on how this is going to be received today? We've already seen there's going to be quite a bit of disappointment from factions within the Conservative Party. Do you think the Labour Party are going to have a field day?
I think so. I think this gives the Labour Party a golden opportunity to be the party of optimism, because now they can start sounding almost Liz Truss-like and start talking about growth and how they believe in Britain and the British economy, because they're faced with a government that is responsible for the economic climate and is also saying the economic climate is terrible. So good news for Labour.